Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Liad Hadar. I'm a director of Hadar Incorporated, property law specialist. I'm an attorney, and I'm fortunate enough to be a team leader of a special group of attorneys and support staff at our firm, Hadar Incorporated. I have been speaking to Reconnect You's partners and clients for many months now. And if I am repeating myself, please forgive me. Hopefully I'll still add value in the repeated lessons. Just to start off, I want to just thank Real Estate Investor as well as Reconnect You, our strategic partner, for inviting me. It just shows that if you consistently ask someone, they eventually do invite you to a masterclass. So thank you, Johan, for listening. And hopefully I become a feature here and add value. That's the most important thing for us. Just going to quickly start sharing my screen with everyone. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay, so just to touch base again, today's masterclass is going to be presented by me on behalf of my firm and in strategic partnership with Reconnect You. The agenda is just talk a little bit about our firm, to explain who we are and what we do, and why property law specialists are somewhere you should go as rental agents. I'll then present on the masterclass and some tips and tricks, hopefully some deep value hacks of what you should do as rental agents and managing agents, and then we'll go to a conclusion. So just to start off with a bit of a meme, everyone likes to laugh at attorneys. So I'm just starting off with this one. It just shows you lawyers, what my friends think I do, and in fact, what I think I do is look like suits, which I'm not sure we do exactly. What my mom thinks I do. Again, what I think I do, which is shaking hands and settling matters amicably. It's not always the way, but it's we hope to happens. What society thinks I do, it just shows shouting at people, I guess. And what I really do is a lot of paperwork, and that's true for all of us. Although it's a bit harsh on property managers and attorneys, we do push a lot of paper, but we add a lot of value, and we look to resolve matters and just give great effective service to our clients. And I'm sure property managers are exactly the same. Okay, so just talking about our firm and about specializing. I think it's something Toby spoke about yesterday, and I did tell him yesterday, early this morning on a dry run, that we were going to steal a little bit of his information from his talk, but he spoke about specializing. And the whole idea behind Hadar Incorporated, why it was founded, it was based on two things. Number one, my father's a property developer, and he owned a property, investment property, and I just saw the pain that he encountered when I was still a law student about having a tenant in place not paying rental. It obviously brought it home for me because I watched him and I watched the pain of a bond being due and the bank's not worrying about his story. But as a landlord and a property owner, he wasn't getting the tenant to pay. He didn't have the luxury, I guess, at the time of property managers. So he took it upon himself. And I just realized that someone needs to care. It's like walking into Woolworths now, filling up your baskets and walking out and saying, well, Woolworths are wealthy. They've got money, they're a big corporation, don't worry about them. That same thing applies to tenants and landlords. There's got to be respect by the tenant for the landlord and the landlord's pressures. And as property managers and as their lawyers, we are very mindful of it, of course, and we need to be at all times. So what we did is we also founded our firm not only on care and empathy of understanding the landlord's position, the property manager's position and their day-to-day concerns and trials and tribulations, but also on being specialists. Now, this is something Toby spoke about yesterday. There's generalists and specialists. I believe personally in this world, and I read a book about, Tiger Woods being a specialist and Roger Federer being a generalist before they became the greatest of all times in their respective sports. I believe in the specialist approach. I was a generalist for many, many years. Now I've been doing law for 14 years and counting. I probably look older than I am because of it. But we offer swift, strategic, and specialized property law solutions. And why do we call ourselves property law specialists? Is because when you go to a specialist, they get you the quickest result in the best possible way with the best advice, so you can get your end game quicker. So we also call ourselves Law Firm 2.0. What does that mean for us? It means we are very different in the way we operate to normal law firms or the traditional law firm model. We are based and founded on empathy and care, and we don't have hard targets to hit, billing targets. We don't go thinking How do we build today? How do we build X amount of rands today? First and foremost, we look at service delivery, and we look at giving the right advice and adding value. That brings me into our, and it is in the process of being trademarked, one of our mottos, which is add value, not hours. What that means for us is you look to add value in your clients' lives. You don't look to add hours and billings and profit for yourself. If you add the value, if you become a valued partner, as Toby said yesterday, in fact, in his talk, you then become a respected partner of a business and someone who's trusted. What I encourage you to do, and we pay a lot of money for it, so please let us have some return on our investment, is go to our website, Hadar Incorporated. There's a lot of articles up there that we constantly put up, blog articles and articles that pertain to real life situations, updates in the law, tenant to landlord relationships, evictions, whatever the case may be. I saw in the earlier poll, 41% of you at that time that entered the poll are rental agents and asset managers. So the website really will hopefully add value in your lives. Just a final thing about Hadar Incorporated, and I've already mentioned most of these things, but again, we paid brand strategists, we may as well use it. We're a new age law firm. We pride ourselves on modern, strategic, and empathic law. We are exclusively in the property law space. We've got decades of home experience. We've got a wonderful team here. We're 12 people and growing. We add value, not hours. It's one of our core values that we live by, and our reputation for care and resourcefulness, great communication precedes us. But of course, you should ask for referrals from our current clients. You'll see on our website that we service a lot of REITs, property managers, and individual landlords. We'll help anyone who has a property or is a property manager and who needs assistance and advice. Okay, so just the final thing about Hadar Incorporated on specializing, and this I think talks to everyone in this masterclass, is that we took the Bruce Lee famous quote about the fact that he doesn't fear a man who practices 10,000 kicks once, but he rather fears the man who practices one kick 10,000 times. That makes you a specialist. That makes you an expert. That makes you valuable and also dangerous. From a landlord point of view, we are dangerous for tenants because we know what needs to be done. We know the processes backwards. We know them with our eyes closed. You can wake us up at 2 o'clock in the morning and ask us the eviction processes or rental collection processes, and we'll be able to tell it to you. So moving on to the masterclass, basically the topic today is about unlocking the most value from arrear rental management. Now, for me, and I'll talk about Johan van der Merwe just now, but for me, that talks about the infinite game. I believe in the infinite game, not the finite game, not the short-term return. I believe in relationships, long-term relationships, longevity, and over time, there's no win and lose. If you offer a great service, if you help a landlord unlock its value from, or his or her value from a property, you're doing a great job. The short term is being aggressive and loud and marketing beautifully and getting a result once or twice, but over the long term, you have to consistently perform. For me, it's not only about maximizing profit and money, but it's actually adding value when you manage properties. And the discussions that is around that managing of properties. And I must say that this topic, I can speak about it for days, but I've tried to just summarize it into some core and key values that hopefully add a lot of lessons for all of us in dealing with property management. So just again, this is where I plagiarized Toby from his talk yesterday. He spoke about the biggest concerns in 2022, and I loved seeing this yesterday when I listened to it, because if you look at it, the biggest concerns were in order of numbers: portfolio growth, profitability, and customer retention. I think all three of those are absolutely critical to property managers and how they keep their clients happy and their own businesses growing. And I'll break it down for you now as to why proper property management will help you achieve these goals. So reaching your goals, the way I see it, there's three ways of doing it. There's vetting, there's managing, and then there's terminating, which I'll deal with. That's the unhappy part of things. But the best way of reaching your goals, which we just spoke about, those three major concerns, which is client retention, portfolio growth, and profitability, is first and foremost offering a great service by preventing an issue with a tenant in the future. That's what vetting is all about. If you check the tenant properly, and I'll speak about it shortly, you'll reduce your chances of future pain. Managing, is about keeping a professional and valuable service for both the landlord and the tenant. Therefore, if you manage the property properly, you'll have a happy tenant and a happy landlord. And that, for me, equals reaching your goals and what you guys have said are your biggest concerns. If you run things properly, I believe you'll have happy clients and you'll grow. I understand the organic growth that Johanna was talking about just now is slower, but for me, it's the infinite game. It's a long-term play, and I believe that you have to obviously do both. And then on the downside, if always fails, you need to terminate quickly and start again by getting a new tenant in. This is also critical, obviously, to managing properties properly. Okay, so property management 101. It's quite simple for me. Add value, which means, really look after a property as if it's your own. Just like I said in the story of my dad, he was a property developer, he was a property owner. I was vested, I'm his son, I'm interested, but I also care for other people's problems. I guess that I've been blessed with that skill. So adding value for me means making sure that things tick along nicely, that there's a solution to every problem, not a problem to every solution, as they say. Number two, it's about being effective. And that means just being effective for me means getting to the end, getting to the result as quickly as possible, having something that's tangible and helping a landlord with an issue. And by the same token, helping a tenant who's got an issue. Because remember, as I said a bit earlier, the tenant-landlord relationship is about keeping both of them happy. And the last thing is doing the right things and offering the right advice. That's more about specializing, understanding the laws, understanding the processes, understanding the options available to the landlord. And I hope that this chat gives you a little bit of that if you don't know it already. So in summary of property management, for me, currently, for this talk, there's three crucial elements. It's vetting, it's managing, and then it's terminating. So Benjamin Franklin's creditor of the quote, failing to plan is planning to fail. And it's been so applicable to me, at least in my career, 14 years of looking at tenant-landlord relationships, of analyzing, because I look back at it and say, where did it go wrong? And remember, what we do is we help in residential, industrial, commercial, retail premises. So it's all the same. You've got a landlord, you've got a tenant. The only difference is the tenant an individual or is it a company? Most of the time, that's the biggest differentiator. So it's critical that when you place a tenant, you vet them properly. So looking at vetting, the definition of vetting as a noun is the process of checking something with great care. An example is the agreement went through a careful process of vetting by lawyers. Second example, or second definition, is the process about process of finding out everything about a person's past life and career in order to decide if they are suitable for something. A great example here is screening and vetting all airport-based employees, of course, because there's high security risks. I think that's something critical. Both definitions are critical for when you vet a tenant. And number one, of course, great care. Use care. Look at it carefully. Don't just worry about the sale. Of course, we all hope to be great salesmen and women. But remember that that's a finite, infinite game. Finite game means if I do things properly now, in the long term, there'll be a great return on it. So use care, look at it carefully, vet it carefully. And number two, about finding out about their previous life, that's going to be critical. I was going to talk into my points just now. So I've got a theory about the butterfly effect. I didn't come up with the butterfly effect. Of course, I'm not nearly that smart, but a scientist came up with it. And I love the definition, albeit it's very high level. It's a property of chaotic systems, such as the atmosphere, by which small changes in initial conditions can lead to large-scale and unpredictable variation in the future state of the system. Now, it's a mouthful, but let's break it down. A property of chaotic systems, such as the atmosphere, by which small changes in initial conditions can lead to large-scale and unpredictable variations in the future state of the same system. So, for example, the famous example is a butterfly literally flapping its wings in South America, causing a hurricane in North America. They say that the smallest changes in the atmosphere can actually cause that. So to make that applicable for my discussion is that the smallest nuance, the extra care in vetting a tenant or just being a great property manager will make a big difference in the long run. So for example, here's some practical vetting examples. credit checks. I believe the WeConnect You, and a leader from WeConnect You confirmed this for me. WeConnect You system actually allows you to do credit checks. Number one, before you place a tenant, you always do a credit check. You're doing the landlord a disservice, and yourself, of course, because I'll come straight back at you and say, how could you place this person in here? But you're doing them a great service by doing a proper credit check and checking, most importantly, in a credit check for two things: an adverse listing and an actual judgment, a court judgment against them. A court judgment carries more weight than a listing, but they're both bad news. A listing is a red flag. For example, if a Vodacom, MTA, and DSTV have listed the consumer as a late payer or a non-payer, it's a red flag. And a judgment is a non-starter. If someone has a judgment against them, I personally wouldn't place them unless, and there's always a proviso with attorneys, unless you get a few months worth of a deposit that you can then apportion should the problems hit the fan. And bank statement, next step, is crucial. You need to see, and that talks to financial means test, but you need to see the tenant's ability, whether it's an individual or a company, to actually be able to afford the rental at the premises. So bank statements are obviously a number one indicator of what this company has in its account, how much money comes in and out, what flows in, what flows out. And that talks to the financial means test. If you can see, for example, on an individual, for example's sake, that they earn 20,000 Rand a month, but every month they spend 19,000 Rand a month, including not including rental, how are they going to afford the rental? So you've got to apply your mind and look at these documents and really add value by saying to the landlord, look at the test I've done. This is not the tenant for you. I know you're desperate. I know you want a tenant, but this is going to be painful in the long run. It doesn't seem like they are going to afford it, or they've got a judgment against them, or they've got an adverse listing. It's too much of a red flag. There's too much risk involved. The second thing to check for me is a proof of income. If it's an individual, of course, it's very simple. You get a pay slip from their company, maybe make a call just to make sure they actually work there. You know, if any of you have watched The Tinder Swindler recently on Netflix, you'll see that there are some absolutely deranged, but unfortunately evil genius people out there. So make sure that it's legitimate. Get the proof of income, payment, the pay slip, and phone the company to confirm it. If it's a company tenant, for example, in a commercial or industrial space, then you ask for audited financials. You need to see, or management accounts, but management accounts are the risk here. If you can get audited financials, and again, you're doing your job, you are vetting properly, you are adding value in what you do for the landlord, and you're avoiding the long-term pain with this tenant to the extent that you can control it, of course. And number three, probably the most critical for me above the first two, is a referral from the previous landlord or managing agent. You guys will all know when you've had one bad tenant and a bad experience, the last thing you are going to do is want to give them a positive referral or help them get alternative premises and then screw over effectively another landlord. I think that we all owe it to ourselves ethically, professionally, to make sure that such bad tenants do not get placed again and then cause the same harm to a new landlord. Okay, that's vetting. Then we're moving on to managing. Managing is an adjective, and basically the definition that I found was having administrative control or authority. So the example is the property manager was excellent in managing the landlord-tenant relationship. That talks to what I spoke about earlier, managing the relationship, keeping both tenant and landlord happy. But remember that the tenant is actually the customer. They need to be kept happy. So the tips about managing are communication, constant, ongoing communication. It is critical to the relationship, it's the management of the relationship if you can do this. You've got to also manage expectations. If the landlord expected a certain thing of the tenant, for example, payment on the first, make sure that's when it gets done. If the tenant expected the hot water to always be running, of course you're going to manage that expectation. Make sure that it gets done. Those small pressure points make such a difference in the long run. I can tell you now from personal experience and anecdotes, I've had experiences with cases in where a tenant stopped paying rental on light bulbs not being changed. And I'm talking about commercial premises that were 80, 100,000 Rand a month in rental. They stopped paying because the light bulbs weren't fixed. And they were right to demand it, but wrong to not pay, of course. But it just shows you can avoid the situation by managing the expectations. The third thing is offering expert and effective advice. So always keep up to date. Go to these talks of masterclasses like these. Listen to things, learn new things, offer effective advice. Make sure that you don't have a lag time. And that's the last point, which is taking action. And time is of the essence. And I'll explain to you why. I've created this graph, or whatever you want to call it, a timeline. I used it in a publication for Asset Magazine in an article. And basically, it just runs you through the normal cycle. You guys know better than I do about what happens with tenants. And when the due date comes, when it's due on the 1st and payment for rental should be paid, it's expected. Then there's broken promises between day 2 and day 6. You all know about it. You phone the tenant because you're good property managers, and they tell you all sorts of stories, and they keep making undertakings and break them. There's still nothing on day 7. Now it's a week down the line, and you're getting frustrated. The landlord's really getting upset. You then at hope to despair stage, when no payments received. You had all this hope. You told the landlord, don't worry, give them a few more days, and that hope starts turning to despair. No payments received. The indulgence that you gave them turns to huge frustration. The landlord starts becoming very upset with everyone. And then you have to raise the alarm, which is sending a letter of demand on the 15th day. That's too late. The 15th day is too late. I've spoken about this, and I need so much more time to speak about taking action. But you have to raise the alarm and send the letter of demand out as soon as you can after the breach occurs. I think it's critical to be aware of that always. Okay, so managing, and Johan asked me to do this, so I'm doing this for Johan, and it's very important to speak about it as a secondary income stream. I did focus, and I will always focus on a bigger picture of offering value as property managers, and that's how you unlock profit, of course, by being wonderful professionals and getting the job done and building a reputation. But there is a secondary income stream for you. It's called the Debt Collectors Act. There's huge debate as to whether you guys as property managers need to be registered or not. That's up for you to debate. In my mind, as a lawyer, I'm conservative here, and generally I'm not, if you ask my team. In this situation, you should register with the debt collectors in line with the Debt Collectors Act. Who can charge? Someone who's registered in terms of the Act. What can be charged? I'll break it down for you now. And why bother? Because you are creating a secondary income stream. And I see that there's a poll up about whether you charge for it or not. And I see a lot of you do. So let's just maybe make sure that you do register. If you feel that you are not as conservative as I am, you should still probably follow that advice. So just breaking down the example of a secondary income stream. Here's Johan, by the way, just asking me how to speak about this topic. It's not actually Johan, sorry, it looks a bit like him though. But just to talk about it, this is directly from the Debt Collectors Act. I just want to shoot through this quickly because I see I'm running out of time, but you have to just be aware of certain things here. I've highlighted the fact that you actually can't exceed the capital amount, of course, of the debt, or 1023 in fees, whichever the lesser. So make sure you're not charging more than that on your debt collection costs. Now, you'll see a breakdown in the table what you're entitled to charge for in terms of the Act. Moving that forward, what I've done is I've given you a basic example. If you were charging in terms of the Debt Collector Act, and you anyway sending letters of demand, in fact, you're using the We Connect You system, and in fact, you're using Hadar Incorporated and associated other law firms' letterheads as a value add for you guys as customers, you may as well charge for it. So here's a breakdown of all the things you could charge for: a letter of demand, and then a necessary phone call to the debtor, another necessary phone call, a few correspondences received, a consultation with the debtor, you sign the acknowledgement of debt, and you have a receipt of an installment payment. And the total fees for that one debtor would be 767 Rand and 50 cents, to be completely accurate. That's not a bad income stream if you've got hundreds of tenants, is it? So I'm just putting it out there for you as a possible secondary income stream. And there's Johan again after looking at this exercise and really enjoying himself. Terminating in conclusion of this talk, because as I promised, and I want to break my promise, I'm on 24 minutes, is the final and the negative part of this chat. What happens if all the things I've just told you don't work out? You do all the professional things, you try your best, and the tenant is just unplayable. What happens? You need to terminate. You just understand it's over, it's done. There's no drawing blood from stone. Terminating the tenant, it's very simple. Breach, 20 business days in terms of residential lease period, or 7 days, depending what the lease says in commercial, retail, industrial space. You then, if they don't remedy, you have to cancel, and you need to evict if they don't leave. But going back to Hadar Incorporated and Law Firm 2.0, do not litigate if you can avoid it. settle matters amicably. Often a residential premises, if you actually pay the tenant 5,000 Rand, they will leave. It's cheaper than going to lawyers. And I'm sorry, Expello and Elise and Marlon, or my colleagues who offer the service, so do we. Obviously, settling the matter, it's anti-profit for our law firms, but it's great advice. If you can do it, please do so. Just in closing, I have no idea why he carries on singing. I was going to say to you that you need to be great and do good, add value, be our partners if you want to, ask us for some advice. And in overall, sorry, I'm just facing some difficulties here. I just want to say to you that you're welcome to always contact us. You're welcome to speak to anyone in our team, get some value, add from us, ask us all the questions in the world. We've got time for every property manager and landlord. We are empathic. We understand the concerns. We understand your daily pressures. And feel free to speak to us and connect with us. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And I've just gone a little bit over time. I apologize, Neil, but thank you so much for your time.